Hello, Rama Pupodu. Hope all are in good health, feeling great, wonderful, having a happy and peaceful life. Now let's continue with a new devotee, Viswanathaswami. Bhagwan's mother, Alagammal's brother, lived in Dindigal. His wife died soon after giving birth to a son. Bhagavan's parents brought the orphan child, Ramaswamy, to their home and raised him with much affection and care. Just before Bhagavan was born, Mother Alagammal told the midwife, I am very excited. I want this to be a girl who can be the wife to my brother's son. That night in Tiruchuli, when Bhagavan was born, the blind midwife shouted, Alagu, it is a boy. Be happy, I saw a brilliant light. Alagu rejoiced. Alagammal was disappointed that it was not a girl, and in her disappointment, she overlooked this remarkable incident of the blind midwife seeing a brilliant light. In his later years, Ramaswamy became a lawyer known for his upright character. He was also a strict disciplinarian who was held in a high regard because of his service to society. One of his sons was Viswanathan. Like his brothers, Viswanathan was brilliant and gifted with a sharp intellect. Along with his brothers, he too was deeply involved in India's freedom movement. In 1921, when still in college, he was arrested for opposing the British government. The university examinations were to be held, so his father bailed him out. But instead of going to his house in Dindigul, he got off at Tiruvannamalai to meet his uncle, Venkataraman, now known as Ramana Maharishi. This is how he describes his very first encounter with Bhagavan's glance of grace. Bhagavan was standing in an open space in front of Kanda Ashramam. When I first laid eyes on him, I saw in him something quite arresting, which clearly distinguished him from all the others I have seen. He seemed to have lived apart from the physical frame, as though quite detached from it. His look and smile had a remarkable spiritual charm. When he spoke, his words seemed to come out of an abyss. One could see immaculate purity and non attachment in him and in his movements. I sensed something very refined, lofty, and sacred about him. In his vicinity, the mind's distractions were overpowered by an austere and potent calm. In his presence, the unique bliss of peace was directly experienced. This I would call Ramana Lahari, the blissful atmosphere of Sri Ramana. In this ecstasy of grace, one loses one's sense of separate individuality, and there remains something grand which pervades all and devours all. This indeed is the spirit of Arunachala that swallows up the whole universe in its gracious effulgence. It is no wonder that after this experience of ecstasy, Vishwanathan stayed on for a few days. Bhagavan's mother Alagamal and Bhagavan's brother Chinnaswamy were also present. They knew Vishwanathan from his childhood days and were aware that he was a Sanskrit scholar even at the tender age, so they asked him to recite some holy Sanskrit verses. When the recitation was over, Bhagavan slowly turned his attention to Vishwanathan and said, You have learned all this. This was not so in my case. Before I came here, I knew nothing. I learned not a thing. Some mysterious power took possession of me, and induced a true transformation. Whoever knew then that this would happen to me? Your father, who intended in his boyhood to go to the Himalayas to perform tapas, became the head of a large family, and I, who knew nothing, have been drawn and kept here for good. When I left home in my 17th year, I was like a speck swept away by a tremendous flood. I knew neither my body nor the world, whether it was day or night. It was difficult to even open my eyes. My eyelids seemed to be glued down. My body became a mere skeleton. Visitors pitied my plight because they were not aware of how blissful I was. It was only years later, when I happened to look into some of the books on Vedanta which were brought to me, that I came across the term Brahman. I was amused and asked myself, is this experience known as Brahman? Vishwanathan had to leave. As he bade farewell with a heavy heart, Bhagavan handed him a copy of Sri Ramana Gita. It contains Bhagavan's answers to questions put by Kavya Kanta and his disciples, and it's invaluable to every seeker. While giving it to him, Bhagavan said, "Give it to your father and ask him to read it." Vishwanathan studied it truly in Dindigul. He was immersed in studying it, particularly chapter 18, wherein Bhagavan's greatness is extolled in exquisite Sanskrit poetry. This moved Vishwanathan so deeply that he decided to give up the world and go stay at the holy feet of Bhagavan. In January 1923, he went back to Tiruvannamalai without informing his parents. By this time, Bhagavan had already come down to the present Ramana ashramam. When he presented himself, Bhagavan's first question was, "Did you leave any letter or tell your parents about coming here?" Vishwanathan shook his head. "I did it when I left my home. Why did you not do it? Now write a letter to your parents that you are here safe and sound," Bhagavan instructed. Bhagavan then permitted him to stay. Vishwanathan discovered that Bhagavan's power and presence were so strong that he did not need any formal practice. But still, he studied Bhagavan's works truly and worked in the ashramam in Bhagavan's inspirational presence. The more he studied Bhagavan's teachings, the stronger his conviction became that the mere presence, the mere proximity, and spiritually uplifting company of Bhagavan was more than enough. His conviction grew even stronger when he later read one of Bhagavan's verses in the supplement to 40 verses on reality. When one associates oneself with the company of a sage, there is no need for religious and spiritual practices, just as there is no need for a fan when the cool southern breeze blows. After a few days, Bhagavan asked him what mode of spiritual practice he was ready to take up. Vishwanathan replied that from childhood he was drawn to the Gayatri mantra, one of the holiest Hindu mantras, and that he had been chanting it. Bhagavan replied, "That is very good, but you must practice it sincerely, every day at a particular time, totally haunting yourself with it." Bhagavan then took Vishwanathan behind Ramana Ashramam to a small cave on the hill. If one sits there, one can view Arunachala on the eastern and western sides without the discomfort of the burning sun. Bhagavan told him, "There is a particular time when you should do the japa. I will come and inspect your practice, so be very disciplined about it." Viswanathaswami actually took me to that cave, and I was elated because he said Bhagavan did come and check. Those were not merely words. However, being completely engrossed in his japa, Vishwanathan was not aware that Bhagavan checked many times to make sure that he was capable of fulfilling his commitment. Vishwanathan lived with Bhagavan from 1923 to 1927, doing others' practice. This was the period of effulgence and of effort. The Guru bestows his grace when the disciple sincerely makes the effort. Vishwanathan was not sure how far he had progressed, and so he asked Bhagavan, Bhagavan, how can I rise above my present animal instincts? My own efforts have proven futile. I am convinced that only a superior power can transform me. Bhagavan replied with great compassion, Yes, you are right. It is by awakening a power higher and mightier than the senses and the mind that these can be subdued. If you awaken and nurture the growth of that higher power within you, everything else will unfold mystically. One should sustain the current of meditation uninterruptedly, moderation in food, and similar restraints taken up studiously and judiciously will be helpful in maintaining inner poise. Bhagavan added, Vishwanatha, do not mingle with people who come here. Do not waste time socializing, talking with people, and also getting attached. Keep your talking to the minimum. Vishwanatha Swami devotedly adhered to Bhagavan's words, so much so that whenever he spoke, his voice was almost inaudible. He restricted his movements to going to the town to beg for food. Later, some old devotees told me that Viswanatha Swami was known for his soft spoken demeanor and restrained movement. I want to share a very interesting incident with which Vishwanatha Swami described to me about this important stage of his life. After 4 months of him coming to Bhagavan, a letter arrived from Dindigul stating that Vishwanatha Swami's father was coming for a visit. Vishwanatha Swami showed this letter to Bhagavan, who, with total compassion, said, Vishwanatha, your family is also coming. Go to the railway station, receive them, but do not talk to your father without my presence. Receive them and drop them in the town where they have arranged for a house to stay in. As for you, go back to your cave and keep doing your japa. I will send word for you, but even then, do not talk to your father. Come and prostrate, not to me, but to your father, and stand in silence. I will look after the rest. Vishwanathan's father, Ramaswamy, did not know Bhagavan's spiritual stature. He knew him as Venkataraman, a runaway relative who had taken to ascetic life. At that time, the old hall at Ramana Ashramam was being built, and so Bhagavan and the others had moved to a mantap across the road. When Vishwanatha Swami's father came there and saw Bhagavan, he could sense his spiritual stature. The next moment, he prostrated before him in absolute awe and devotion. That's all, folks. Let's continue in the next chapter. Thank you. Bye bye. Rama Rama Pupoda.